Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. Thank you everyone that submitted questions on my Game of Thrones video last night. I think everyone feels like episode 8 is the best episode this season so far. I mean, we still have 2 more, but it's going to be really hard to top a White Walker battle. Most of the questions that I saw people asking were related to that, but I did try to include some Arya and Cersei stuff too. Ramsay gets really pissed when you forget him too. So here we go, just careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet. Starting with questions. Snootzel asks, are there different levels of whites aside from the top commanders and the ones that seem like skeletons? So you're talking about like, the difference between White Walkers, whites, everyone that we saw basically. It's a lot simpler than you think. So what you have from the top down, you have the Night's King, then you have White Walkers, then you have the whites. They're also able to turn animals. That's how they ride the horses. They have the undead horses. So that means they can turn other animals too. So you can consider those a different type of white. They don't really differentiate between humanoid whites. They're all the same. Most people feel like Winds of Winter is going to be the book where George R. R. Martin gets really deep on White Walkers in their culture. As for right now, we don't know a lot about what's going on inside the minds of whites. It doesn't look like it's a hive mind situation. It looks like they have some sort of basic mental functions, like they know what their target is, probably defined by the Night's King or the White Walkers that are commanding them. It's as if the White Walker gives them their target and then they just go after it. It's as simple as that, until they fall. Like whenever they poured over the cliff, they were temporarily immobilized until they reanimated again. So you can slow them down, but you can't destroy them unless you use one of their specific weaknesses. Next question, Handsome Jack asks, can Valyrian steel actually kill the others, or is the sword Jon used something special like Lightbringer? You're talking about the weapon of Azor Ahai, like the flaming sword. No, Valyrian steel is one of their weaknesses. White Walkers, the Night's King, and the Whites have some known weaknesses, one being Valyrian steel, as we saw, Jon Snow, Dragon Glass, which we also know about. They're also weak against Dragonfire, but obviously there are no dragons in Westeros right now. We also saw in the Season 4 finale that they're weak against the magic of the Children of the Forest. Next question, Bartu asks, what do you think Ramsay needs his 20 men for? Well, he's basically just going to lead a raiding party against Stannis. He feels like they're stuck in the snow, so they're completely vulnerable. This could be one of those big changes from the book, so I'm really hoping to see Ramsay get his ass handed to him. I think it's the synopsis for episode 9, but it says, Stannis' gamble pays off. It sounds like Stannis is still going to be around through the season finale. And I don't know if Ramsay's going to die, but it would be awesome if Ramsay were to get captured. Just like the show had like a really special fate in mind for Joffrey, for some of the worst people on the show, I'm hoping it saves something really special for Ramsay. That's actually a good question for you guys. If Ramsay is going to go somehow, either this season or next season, how would you want him to go? I feel like the way a character needs to leave the show, like the spectacle with which they leave, needs to be equal to the craziness of their character. So Ramsay, being the most awful person on the show right now, has to have the most spectacularly awful ending. Next question, Crazyback asks, do you think that they'll take elements from the Young Griff storyline when Dany eventually comes to Westeros? So you're asking, like things that they cut out from the show, will they give those to Dany or other characters? A lot of it will just be in the form of Easter eggs. Like in this episode, they mentioned at least like 4 book things. Like Ramsay said, a feast for crows, while winking at the camera almost. They'll just continue to do that more and more as the show plot diverges from the book plot. But I do think that they'll continue to reference the Young Griff storyline. And there's always metaphors that you can draw up. Sometimes they're kind of far-reaching. Like saying that Ser Jorah is Jon Connington is a bit of a stretch. They just have some similarities right now. Without the writers, coming out and saying specifically, yeah, we referenced this one character, this one storyline from the book, it's really open to interpretation. Just in the name of fun, I'm always willing to entertain ideas, but just remember that a lot of it is just fan theories. For now, though, just assume there is no Young Griff character on the show, and that storyline is completely gone. And the Daenerys storyline will just proceed according to what Dan and Dave felt like George R. R. Martin was going to do with her. Next question, Galactic asks, I know everyone hates Ollie, but if you're just a kid and your family got slaughtered and someone wanted to help the guys who did it, I'd be pretty salty too. Yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of Ollie hate at the end of this season. There's even like a subreddit right now, I think, called I Hate Ollie. So just be prepared for that, everyone. I think Ollie's going to wind up getting a lot of reverse Joffrey hate. Like, you hate Joffrey because he's such a douche and because he's so crazy. But people will hate Ollie for the same reasons, even though technically he's not a character like Joffrey. He's not an evil character. You're supposed to sympathize with him, but some things are just so ridiculous that you can't forgive them. Next question, Cassie asks, do the others practice blood magic? And if so, maybe the Night's King captured Benjen Stark to use his blood somehow. Well, there's a lot we don't know about the White Walkers. As far as we know, their magic is completely different from the magic of the Red God. Acolytes of both gods, White Walkers as well as priests of the Red God, can resurrect people. So, there's certain similarities and abilities, but the way they go about it feels like it's a little bit different. It's one of those things that George R. R. Martin just hasn't explained yet in the books. That's why we're waiting for Winds of Winter. It's like, please explain these things. They're very complicated, very interesting. There are a lot of different gods on Game of Thrones, a lot of different religions that I think are distinct. It's not like people just misinterpreting things and it's really just two gods. But I think the best way to think about White Walker magic is primarily based on ice and necromancy. Thematically, it makes sense that they would just put it forward as like a wintry looking type of magic. But just to keep making ice references, necromancy, just the tip of the iceberg. There's no really good explanation. So, I feel like characters like Samwell are going to explain things like this in Season 6 and Season 7. The characters that read a lot of books, there aren't a whole lot of people alive that are masters of those crafts. And it's not like the Night's King is going to do an evil guy monologue anytime soon explaining his grand plan and how everything works. That would be hilarious. Next question, Decaposaurus asks, does winter follow the whites wherever they go? Is it do they control winter weather, or do the whites just move with winter storms? I would say it's a combination of two. The world is slowly getting closer, but a lot of it has to do with the magic of the Great Other. The Night's King seems like he's pretty powerful, so I would say, he probably has a small level of control over the weather. But it's not like he has a winter infinity gauntlet where he can just snap his fingers and turn the world to complete winter overnight. So the winter storm that we saw in this episode is probably something that the White Walkers and the Night's King conjured up. But during the long night, just imagine that winter storm covering all of Westeros. Next question, Space Gypsy asks, since we found out Valyrian steel is also capable of killing White Walkers, and it's in such short supply, do you think that Jon will melt down his blade into arrowheads for the wildlings to use? No, I don't think they'll do that. They probably don't have anyone that can reshape Valyrian steel there. Remember, Tywin had to send for someone overseas. They're such a rare trade. They didn't say specifically on the show, but Samwell does find a cache of dragon glass. Historically, in the early years after the wall was built, right after the Long Night, the Children of the Forest would give dragon glass shipments to the Night's Watch to help them. If for some reason the show just decides to forget that plot point, they could always send someone back to Dragonstone to get more. Because remember, Dragonstone is covered with dragon glass. So if they're smart enough to look for it, there is a lot more dragon glass that they can use at the Night's Watch. The question is will Alistair Thorne and his assholes listen to Samwell and Jon? Will they go for dragon glass or say, that's all bullcrap? Right now, about half of the Night's Watch only wants to kill the wildlings. They're not thinking about anything else. Next question, Marriage O'Brien asks, regarding Jorah, Tyrion should have advised her to send him on a quest. You're saying, instead of just outright banishing him. I think he'll definitely be back next season unless he dies in the finale. Don't worry, Jorah just feels like a character that's way too interesting to throw him away. He does have grayscale, but it's killing him slowly enough that he could live through the entirety of season 6 if the writers wanted to go that direction. But I feel like Daenerys is going through the same type of storyline as Jon Snow. There's a lot of parallels between the two of them. Jon Snow started by battling the wildlings. Then they realized that they have a common enemy that's way worse, so they put their differences aside and started working together. I think Daenerys is just a few steps behind that, but she'll eventually realize that she needs Jorah's help because of this bigger enemy of the Harpies. Although if you really want to compare apples to oranges between storylines, I feel like the Harpies are Daenerys' version of the wildlings. She needs to turn all the people of Meereen into her allies because the real common threat is the White Walkers, even though she hasn't seen them yet. So I think, unless Jorah is marked for some spectacular gladiator death in the arena, he will be back with Daenerys and Tyrion by season 6. Thank you so much, everyone, for submitting questions. These are always a ton of fun to do. I did see a lot of people were asking about when, winter officially begins. Technically, the Citadel down in Oton, the Maesters of the Citadel, define when winter begins. They can control the calendar that way. There are a couple different concepts associated with that. First, there's winter. Winter is basically when it's snowing all the way down in King's Landing. The Long Night, as Jon said, would be a winter that covers the entire Earth when it's snowing in Meereen. A lot of people were also asking about Arya and the Moneylender, so just to explain that real quick. The reason Jaqen is sicking Arya, or Cat of the Canals, however you want to think about her, on the Moneylender is because he isn't paying out what you would call insurance money to the families of sea captains who die at sea. He's like a douchey insurance agent who isn't paying out insurance. And congratulations to this week's giveaway winner. Let's see, Brave Katniss, you win an HBO Now subscription. Just be sure to DM me on the back end of my channel so I'll get your contact info. It's on the About page. A lot of you also asked for like some specific bonus videos on White Walkers and stuff like that. I might do some updates, but I have done a few older videos, like I did some videos last year on that stuff, so check the description for extra links. So just in case you guys haven't seen it, you can click here for my episode 8 video from last night, and you can click here to learn all about Euron Greyjoy. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.